there are many things that journalists can do, I think, during times of conflict and when they're reporting on issues involving extremists, problems of terrorism. I think some of the key issues are that they can create a possibility for people from different groups to talk to each other. They can create a channel for communications that enables people from conflicting sides to engage with each other, not in a shouting match, but create the possibility for real dialogue. Journalists can play an important role there. They can provide people with the information that they need to make informed decisions during times of conflict, which is often really critical. They can educate people about the possibilities for resolving conflict and maybe give them ideas and examples from other countries and other places where there have been people have come up with solutions to conflicts, and journalists can play an important role there. They can empower weaker parties. They can, just by giving weaker groups a chance to talk to the public and giving them a microphone, journalists give weaker parties sometimes a possibility to speak back as equals to more powerful groups. So those are some of the many things that journalists can do. In both situations, I think, it is the role of journalists in conflict. I think, for me, a big thing is that pretty much any situation that journalists are reporting on is a conflict situation, actually. Conflict is what makes news news. Conflict is all about change, and news is about change. So the two things go hand in hand. Sometimes you get highly aggravated conflicts where that's destructive. Sometimes you get normal disputes within communities or within societies, but both actually can be categorized as conflicts. Journalists face an enormous number of challenges today, and it's a pity because they have such potential to make a real difference. I think in many instances, political leaders in places don't recognize the potential that journalists have to make a difference during times of conflict. And so sometimes they're not as forthcoming with information as they should be. Sometimes they restrict journalists from being able to report freely and independently. And when they do that, they are restricting the possibilities of journalists to actually make a constructive contribution. Any questions around extremism, terrorism, radicalization? I think journalists need to be very careful how they report on those things. Firstly, they don't want to to play into the hands of extremist groups, and to stereotype other people, to create situations where whole populations are accused of being linked to extremism when that's very seldom the case. So journalists need to be very cautious in terms of how they represent things, and to show very often that small groups from within bigger groups may be involved in extremism, but it's not the whole group that's there. That's one thing that journalists can do. I think they need to report on all situations in a way that creates the possibility for people to talk about their problems. And in a way that creates the possibility for the world to change, because extremist groups don't come out of nowhere. They come out of problem situations, and if journalists can contribute towards a better society, in a way they're already helping to contribute towards reducing extremism. Well, all journalists need to have a deeper understanding of how conflicts work, and to recognize that conflicts are very seldom simple, that they're complex situations, and can't just cover them simply. One needs to actually be prepared to spend time getting to understand a conflict, getting to understand the needs and the interests of the different parties involved, being able to prepared to go deep. If you're not prepared to do that, then you're going to distort the conflict, and that creates problems. Well, I think the key thing is to deepen the understanding of how conflict actually operates. I think learning about conflict is something that all journalists should do, and get an understanding of conflict theory. That's my particular position on this. Not everyone would agree with me, but I think that's a key thing to do. And there's a whole field I come from an academic background. There's a whole field in academia that focuses on understanding conflict, and I think journalists would benefit from having, they don't need to become professors in the field, but to have a reasonable understanding of some of those issues is important, and that's what I like to spend my time doing.